Welcome to the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Cramer. Our guest today is Wendy Brookhouse. We're going to talk about financial confidence and let's start building some wealth. Welcome to the show, Wendy.
Thank you, Alicia. I'm so excited to be here to talk about money because I do love talking about money.
Well, most of us love money to some extent.
Yep.
Certainly there are people who are really wrestling with that. In fact, there are some people where if I say, do you love money? It's going to make them cringe.
Yep.
Because it's so indoctrinated culturally and spiritually. You're not supposed to love money. You need it.
Yep.
You should want it. You need it to be a good provider for your family, a good provider for your employees. And yet there are all of these deep issues around the subject. But if we are able to dispel all of the crazy dogmatic beliefs about money, and let's just kind of cut the BS and say, you need it in order to have a good life for yourself, for your family, to be able to continue to grow your business, provide your products and services, to pay your team. So we're talking about a tool, a resource that is directly related to our quality of life. Now let's talk about you and your business.
Absolutely. Well, I just wanted to layer on top of that for a second, because not only is it about your life, but it helps fuel your purpose, right? I think sometimes we forget that if you make more money, you can impact more lives with your activities.
So true. So true. So tell us about what you do, Wendy. Tell us about your business.
So I guess the traditional financial planner banner can be put on me. However, I've always approached life a bit differently. And it's almost like from the time I came into the industry, I came in as an independent from the get-go. So there was no one telling me, this is how you do it. And as a result, I think I was able to create different methodologies, different things, because I'm like, my clients need this. So let me build something that will get them that, as opposed to trying to sell a product or do anything like that. I was more about, what does the client need? And from that plan, if there are products to be sold, it was because it was a byproduct of the plan that said, hey, based on these analysis, you should have this, versus leading with, you should have this. And so contextually, everything's always put into place. And we focus more on a little bit more on the mindset stuff, like less, I'm not you, let's be clear, but I'm more, but I like to try and get them surfaced in the sense that, let's look at how you've been spending your money. Let's look at that. There's something here. Is there a pattern that you should be aware of? What did you learn from your parents about money that is impacting? Like, what would you like to continue to do? What don't you want to do? All these things, as you surface them, at least people start thinking about them. Because they're not aware of the patterns that are actually impacting how well their business is doing, how much they're charging for their services, and whether they feel worthy or not. All those things are all packaged up, but it definitely can be seen in the financials. It can be seen in the patterns around numbers. And so we try and build plans and implementation strategies that help them circumnavigate some of those walls they've built in themselves. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. So we're talking about the inner strategy as well as the outer strategy, which is so important, because whether it is dealing with your finances, building your wealth, or doing the day-to-day tactical things in your business to grow, you can be doing all the right stuff and not getting the intended results when you have these unaddressed patterns, which are usually very obvious once you actually start to look at them objectively. But when you're in the thick of things and you're focused on, I'm doing all the stuff, why isn't this working? How do I need to fix this? How do I need to change this? What else do I need to do? while you're
Very practical.
simultaneously feeling all the conflict and all of that
Mm,
stuff, you really have your blinders on to those very obvious signs that are all around you. And when you can take those steps back, you can see those things objectively. Now you can actually start to change those patterns.
I 100% agree with you, Lisa. And the analogy I use is a lot of times as business owners, we're hugging the tree. And we need to bring in experts to help us get above the forest, to look down at the trees as opposed to, but we're so busy, it's the website designer that doesn't have his own website because he's so busy helping others. There's all kinds of ways that you're hugging that tree as opposed to looking at the big picture. And that's where I think you have to bring in professional experts who can help you do that in a way that is not judgmental, but rather accepting of where you are, because there's nothing that you can do to change where you are. You are where you are. But from a wealth perspective, how can we build the systems, the processes, and the activities that you need to do to get where you want to get to?
There are a lot of people who are so intimidated by their current circumstances. There's a certain apathy, a hopelessness, a feeling like I have to be doing better than I am before I can get the help that I need. I'd love to talk about that a little bit because I know that that is a huge obstacle for a lot of people in all different areas of life and
Absolutely.
business.
The analogy I use, Alicia, is this, and I actually have it as a slide in a lot of my presentations. You get a super deep cut, like it's bleeding all over the place, Alicia. Do you wait for it to heal before you go to the doctor? No, you do not.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you think of the financial professional, I think of myself as a bit of a money doctor, financial health, all those pieces come together. Guess what? Whatever you're feeling, wherever you are, we've seen it before. And so what happens is we're actually, because again, we're taking you up to the 30,000-foot view, we're actually able to map out a plan so much faster, so much more efficiently, because not only have we seen it before, but we're making you look at the big picture. And I think of it a little bit as a young teen novel from way back in the 80s. A lot of times I will talk to people and I say, that was then, this is now. So whatever got you here, we're going to have to let that go. Right? Because we have to focus. If we keep all that baggage with us, it's just going to weigh us down and keep us from actually going to where we want to go. We need new suitcases.
So true. So true. And the message here is really, it is what it is. Start where you're at.
Start where you're at. And the other thing I really think is important is to set your own financial goals. And by what I mean by that is, I think of FOMO, I think of all the stuff we see on social that is just so carefully curated. I was talking to someone the other day and I said, oh, what a beautiful picture of your family that you posted. And they said, if you had seen us 30 seconds before or 30 seconds after, you would not be saying that comment. And I think that is true about a lot of stuff. And so sometimes we see what other people are doing and we're like, oh, why can't I do that? Well, do you really want to? Just because they're doing it and they seem to be happy doing it doesn't mean that's going to be what brings you joy. So actually understanding what is intrinsically true for you from a goal perspective and a wealth perspective is different than everybody else.
This is really a fundamental principle that you're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to paint your own picture. I think of my work as assembling puzzles, and on every puzzle is a different picture. It's your picture. And what you want, what's important to you about family, about travel, about your house, about all the other things that you're doing with your life is way different than your neighbors. So you can't use what they're doing as your barometric of success.
Absolutely. One of the things that I wrote about in my second book, The Outside the Box Entrepreneur, is just that. It's doing that honest evaluation. The more that we are looking at other people who appear to have what we think we want,
Yes.
We really do have to be honest with ourselves about what our motivations are for the goals that we're setting. And I like to say that, you can feel there is a distinction between what your ego wants and what your heart wants. Because your ego wants to feel validated and your ego wants to feel good enough. And you're comparing yourself with maybe your peers and their outward appearance, but maybe you don't want a 10,000 square foot house. Your ego might say, we should have that because that is going to symbolize my success and my worthiness. But when your heart is really desiring that cozy little cottage, you've got to start to clean up all of that inner stuff so you can be really congruent with what you're working towards. And there's a lot of people who achieve a lot of really amazing things, and they're so dissatisfied with their life because they're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Absolutely. And just to layer on one last thing, even though we can see this picture of perfection that we think we want, like you said about the ego, but you're not looking behind it. It's a cover of a book, and the book could be absolutely awful, and you just don't know. So it's hard. It's something to be aware of because I see it all the time.
Yeah. And even if that cover of that book is in alignment and in integrity with that person, they're not you, right? So what is your cover supposed to look like? It's fascinating. And I will oftentimes present this to clients who are kind of having this internal conflict. Like, think of something in your life that you just feel good about. Whatever it is, you love to bicycle, or you love to hike, or you've got this favorite jacket, or whatever it is, right? That's not everyone's cup of tea. Not everyone's going to love that jacket, but you don't care because you love it so much. It's so in integrity with you that the fact that not everyone is going to say, oh, that's amazing, doesn't matter to you. That's what we're talking about here in terms of that alignment and congruency, and getting really clear on what are your goals.
Yes. And then when we get to that point, Alicia, we can start our real work, right? We can start understanding. So as a business owner, we are taught a lot of times to silo our personal lives from our business lives. And so also from a money perspective. But if we think about it, at some level, the reason we run a business is to fund our ideal life. And so forgetting that's what the role of the business is to fund that can sometimes get you into trouble because you are not leading the life you want because you're spending it all on the business and vice versa. So there can be some congruency there. So what I like to do is try and figure out, what does your ideal life look like? What does it cost? And from there, we're able to then go, okay, now what does my business need to do to give me that? And there's a couple of things. There's one more place I want to go with this. And that is, I also want to understand what your power number is. And that's your power of choice when you're working because you love it, not because you have to. Okay, so this is a goal. So there's a couple of numbers along the way we develop so that we can understand when is enough, and have the context to have a really good discussion around, is it worth it? Because without these contextual ideas, we don't necessarily have the ability to properly analyze and make decisions about opportunities or different things of that nature. Is this going to get me closer to the power number? Is that my focus right now? Or it's going to take an extra year to get to the power number, but that's okay because it's something I really, really want to do. So having that ability to have that discussion with yourself can change everything.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I'd like to dive into that just a little bit more, because I think that is a huge, huge takeaway. I don't think a lot of people have given these things much thought.
Yes.
So give us an example of someone who's identified their power number and what that might look like from a practical perspective?
So from a practical perspective, typically it's going to be an asset valuation, right? So that might include the value of your business. It may include the value of your retirement assets you saved for. It's all the assets you have added up. And that's what we know it needs to be to fund your ideal life from here to whenever. So once we know that number, it's great. It does a couple of things, Alicia, for particularly as people are getting kind of a little further down in the life of their business. They're in the 50s, maybe 60s, and they're at that point where, I think I might want to sell my business. So I've seen happen is that a lot of people go, well, if I just hold on one more year, I can build this much more value in my business. But what if you didn't have to? What if you already knew that offer, if I got an offer of this much, it will fund my power number and I'm good, right? So then you can choose, I have enough. And now I can choose, do I want to work one more year, knowing that I've already hit the power number? Or do I want to let it go now because I have other things I want to do? So it gives power. And what happens is that you become more chill. You become less anxious about stuff because you're there. Right? So you're working again because you love it. It does change how you present.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. And there's a lot of wisdom in the sense of security we get when we have whatever our set point is financially.
Yes.
And when we go below that number, it creates a sense of scarcity. It creates an energetic drain. And I've experienced all of these things. I know personally, as well as working with my clients. In fact, in many instances, if I'm on a consultation with a new client and I can tell that there is a real scarcity issue, I will very, very lovingly, but honestly say, if this is going to create financial stress for you, that will distract you and adversely affect the results that you could be getting.
Interesting. I love that.
Now, that doesn't mean that you can't, but here's a thing that's so interesting. How many people, especially when they're sort of in that scarcity mode, are investing in things for their business to get out of the scarcity. And then they are compounding the fear and the scarcity because they're investing resources that they don't have or don't believe that they will have. And it creates all of this additional pressure, and it's actually adversely affecting their mindset and their ability to think clearly and creatively and to take the types of actions confidently that they need to take in order to get the results that they had hoped that they would get. So there's so much psychology and energy that is entangled with this whole financial reality that we're creating for ourselves.
What's coming up for me right now is a concept I talk to my clients a lot about is the ideal versus what you can handle. Okay. So in my ideal world, they're the same, but in a lot of cases they're not. So that my thought process is, let's just go to where you can handle it. And then we build your confidence. We build all the things necessary so that we can start inching towards the ideal. Because like you said, if I put in a solution or recommend a solution that means they're not sleeping at night, I've failed. If I'm trying to reduce stress and anxiety around money in my clients, right? So I understand that not everything we do with our clients is mathematically the best thing to do, but psychologically it is. And I think that's so important to remember as you're building things, is that sometimes even just taking a step in the right direction is better than doing nothing at all.
Absolutely. And that sometimes means you move forward a little bit slower
Yeah.
until you have the strength
Yes.
mentally, emotionally, vibrationally, in your
Mhm.
entire beingness to put
Yeah.
your foot on the accelerator and go. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, a lot of people, they're putting one foot on the accelerator and they're simultaneously hitting the brake over and over and over again. And honestly, you're not getting yourself any further ahead by doing that.
Yeah. And in fact, you're probably, you're not realizing that gas and brake thing. So you're like, now you're setting yourself up to feel like, why aren't I there? I'm pressing the gas because the brake is a subconscious thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to shift gears just a little bit, and I
Sure.
want to speak to you as the business owner. And you know,
Yes.
this question is coming.
Okay, I'm ready. Bring it on.
So I'd love for you to share with us one mindset obstacle that you personally had to overcome in order to get to where you are today.
So one of the mindset obstacles I had to come over was a fear of success. And so how that manifested was maybe not following up with people because then that would mean more work, all those things. And I did hypnotherapy. I did a whole bunch of things and to try and combat it. What it found that actually worked for me was just putting one foot in front of the other, and all of a sudden I was doing it. And then you look back and you go, oh my gosh, look how much I got accomplished. And so the direct assault didn't work on that barrier. It was more of a picking away at it that worked for me to not have that fear of success any longer.
Well, I love that you shared that. And you made an important point because this is a common challenge that people have. Fear of success, fear of failure, imposter syndrome. You know, there's a lot of these things that almost sound cliche, but they're so common. That's why they sound cliche. But now, when you had mentioned that the direct approach didn't directly shift the issue, I'd love to take a moment and piggyback off of that for a moment, because I've been doing this work with clients for over a decade.
Yes.
And when I first started my brick and mortar hypnotherapy practice, it was so fascinating to me because I would have clients come in and we're talking about the same technique, hypnosis, in some cases with the same exact client on different issues. On one issue, it would work almost like magic. Instantaneous.
The seas parted, everything worked.
And on same client, same modality, different challenge, we kept bumping up against resistance. And then I had an aha. And I always say to my clients, especially when I'm working with groups, like if I'm training a group on some of these advanced principles, I always say, if the front door is locked, take the side door or the back door. And what I mean by that is, if one methodology isn't working, the subconscious mind is resisting it. Take a different approach. So what I learned was, because I had previously had an EFT practice, I was like, well, let's just try this. Let's just try some of these other modalities that I'm trained in, even though they're coming in for hypnosis. Let's just try some of these other modalities. And sure enough, we were able to resolve the issue with the different approach. And I came to understand that there's no magic bullet. It's not a one size fit all. There's nothing right inherently or wrong inherently with any technique, any modality, any one thing. We just have to understand that the mind is complex, and our defenses against changing some of our subconscious programming can also be very complex. And so when you have the more flexible approach of meeting someone where they're at, the results are exponentially greater.
Well, when I hear you say that, in my mind, they came in to solve the issue. And so you have a toolbox, just like I have a toolbox. If the goal is to get to the power number, my toolbox might be different for you than it would be for anyone else. And so you're just saying the exact same thing with the toolbox you've built and stocked with really great techniques and modalities from your experience.
And I love that, because that's always the sign of a true expert. Someone who does not have a one size fits all approach, which rarely is effective. And that's why a lot of times you'll see the success rate is very low with certain types of programs and things like that, because they're taking a kind of cookie cutter approach to getting the result. And that is not always meeting people with where they're at.
It's so true. It's funny, we're just doing a new website, and that's one of the lines. You're not a cookie, so why would a cookie cutter approach work?
All right, Wendy, how can our listeners connect with you?
Well, I think the best way, in particular, if they're really starting to think about their wealth and they want to work on their wealth, just like they work on their business and on their lives, that they can take a diagnostic. It's at totalwealthscore.com. It doesn't take very long, but it'll kind of show you on the foundational pieces a little bit about mindset, a little bit about the systems, and a little bit about the activities that you're doing, just to give you a sense of where you are. Because again, how much you have today doesn't matter, but the systems and processes and how you feel about them do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Wendy. This has been a great conversation. I think we've had a lot of really good takeaways, and I do encourage all of our listeners to do that diagnostic. Take some type of action towards your future.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alicia. This has been fantastic.
And of course, I've got to thank all of our listeners. We are doing this for you. If you have not already subscribed, please make sure you do so. And until next time, we will see you in the next episode.